Hi folks, you're with Tassus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about these so-called racist research centres that have sprung up all over the Western world, wherever the globalists are trying to impose the globalist project. And race hustle, race baiting is, of course, one of their principal devices for pushing the globalist project into the rich Western white countries. Then these research centres to study racism and white supremacy and all these other globalist inventions. Some of these are very generously funded, and I just want to look at two. What got me on this was I looked at the finances of or the donations rather. It was just in the news. They got $48 million US, I think it was, in donations, and then on top of that, they were given a free campus within a university or a free building, so they didn't have to pay for office rent. They didn't have to buy furniture or computers. So there was donations in kind, not just money, but so they had no rents, no electricity, nothing to pay for. A lot of the administrative support and legal and other stuff was also provided for free. Now, if you value that in a commercial sense, that's worth another several $1 million. So very generously supported, very generously funded, and given again the professional expertise and support around things such as legal and HR administration, all those sorts of things as well. So looking at that and looking at the number of employees that they had, and then dividing that up over the time they're operating, which is a couple of years, and you notice that the average, if you just average out the money, apparently they burn through all the money, but you just average it out, it works out as ballpark $400,000 US per person per year, given that number of employees. Now, as the employees weren't hired immediately at day one, and they sort of trickled in over subsequent months, that average per person would be much higher than 400,000, probably closer to 500,000 per year per person. Now, just to sort of look at that, I just picked a couple of the most prominent people, the names in there. They're the ones that sort of are in charge, so you'd assume they're going to be the biggest pulling the biggest amount of cash out of the scam. So I then looked at their previous employment. So were they getting paid anywhere near that sort of money previously? Well, no. There's one guy's like a high school teacher. From the looks of it, given the years of service, somewhere around $70,000-$80,000 a year, I guess. But I couldn't find anybody that was being paid more than $100,000 a year. And the ones that were getting that sort of money were living in some of the most expensive cities in the United States. And so $100,000 a year in these cities doesn't really get you that far. I mean, you're doing sort of okay, but you'd still need to be relatively frugal with your expenditures if you were going to balance the books every month. But anyway, so that means that these people that were, and let's just round it off and say they were making 100,000, which would be generous. They're being paid 100,000. They were suddenly catapulted into employment where they were getting paid 500,000, and they had no accountability. So their only mission is to produce anti-white propaganda. That's it. Which is, of course, what the globalists want. Give us this anti-white propaganda. Tell us how evil white people are. Tell us that Hitler is everywhere. We want that. That's part of the globalist project. We need it. So it's hardly surprising, though, because you get these low IQ people, most of whom have never had a job. All they've ever done has been, 2-bit low IQ flunky hustlers and goons. That's all they've ever done in their lives. Some of them are quite young and never had a job at all. Some of them are patronage appointments, people who are, say, giving them money or helping them in some way, or demanding that their wastrel niece or daughter or someone gets a gig. Well, they also managed to burn vast sums of money on international travel. So these are supposedly study tours to places that just happen to have exotic beachfront hotels, so they can study racism there. And so clearly it's a junket and a scam. In fact, the whole thing's a scam. They, as best I can tell, they've produced no research that anyone could point to say, well, gee whiz, that's a novel sort of. All they've done is just pump out propaganda, all white people evil, all black people victims. The way to solve racism is to just eradicate all white history, pull down all white statues, and then, hey, guess what? We're good to go. Black people have no history, given that black people had no written history. Black people have no history and no technology. So what we'll do is, in order to make black people feel better, we have to make white people feel worse. And to do that, we have to destroy the entire body of white history and every statue and every history book. And we have to destroy all that, and that'll make us all equal. Hey, wow, why didn't I think of that? Hey, that's definitely going to further civilization. Wow, we're reaching great heights when we can arrive at those sort of conclusions based on research. So there's no fucking research, and nor is it surprising there's no research. I mean, again, we're talking about a bunch of low IQ grifter scammers here. We're not talking about bright people who are genuinely trying to find real problems and develop real answers and solutions. There's none of that. Far from it. It's the complete opposite. So now I've been close to people who are handed lots of money and who, where this equity thing is in. Now, this is not in the area of race or research, but just the concept of handing large amounts of money, unaccountable money, to people who are nothing but grifters and scammers, freeloaders, ideological fanatics, equity fanatics, and these sorts of things. So here's a thing. This is a university. I've mentioned this in another video, but here's a university. They've got a couple of bright, straight white guys, it turns out, have developed this new sort of space age type technology. Very impressive stuff, by the way. I had a look at it. And I thought this had real opportunities to go places. And I think it could have certainly captured a corner of this super high tech type marketplace internationally. And there were some private firms that heard about it and they'd expressed interest. And if there was a successful proof of concept, that is proving this technology would work, at least to some extent, or to prototype stage. So then these companies would underwrite, would in effect financially underwrite it by placing substantial purchase orders, procurement orders in advance. So these guys were on the cusp of greatness, if you like, and it was still just a few white guys really in the research lab and a relatively junior university commercial officer who was there. No one had expected this to become like, wow, this could really take off. This could really be big. I mean, really fucking big. And so what did the university do? Now, you'd think that given that it's not yet successful, but it's looking pretty good, you think they would put on capable people who really know their shit to make sure it was a success. Okay, we've got an opportunity for great success. This is commercial success, technological success. Here's a great opportunity. Let's make sure that we don't allow this to slip through our fingers through ineptitude or dragging our feet or otherwise fucking it up. So now they allocated quite a lot of money to government grants, came in from local and regional and federal governments, and so they were awash with money, and so at this point it's hard to fuck it up. Really, it is difficult to fuck it up at this point. They've got big private sector companies hanging out, pretty much saying, look, just prove the concept and we will throw money at you. And that's all they had to do. So they decided they would create a special, in effect, a quango, really, to bring this product to technically bring it to complete the prototype, bring it to the marketplace and go. So what did they do? Well, they just grabbed, it became a patronage, race, gender, equity, free-for-all. Everybody wanted a piece of the action. Big money was going to come here. Big success, prestige, and so we have to have so many black lesbians. We have to have so many transgenders. We have to have so many this, and we have to have black women have to be more than half, and this and that. And so, now the best sort of the head sort of position, the top position, and the deputies, they were long-term university patronage hires. So these were people who had never had a job in their lives. They'd only been public servants. They'd been sort of really just minor administrators. They were put in there. They then went crazy and decided they were going to use this army of consultants who strangely ended up as the mistresses of the people there, or the relatives of there. So they had this massive, I don't know, well, a patronage machine, of course, is one, but also a nepotism machine. All the relatives, and again the mistresses and the brothers and the sisters and all that sort of stuff being employed, and everybody had to have prestigious titles. They all had to be paid minimum of X amount of money. There was no sort of minimum wage or average wage type pay packets that are going here. And by the way, why should you pay someone an average wage? I mean, we're talking huge money, rivers of money are going to come through the place. Success is assured. We don't need to do anything. The real point here is not to make it successful, but to spend as quickly as we can, as aggressively can, to spend all the money that's coming in the door. That's what we have to do. And here's an opportunity to create a new world of black lesbian equity. So the university equity department was in, of course, all over this. Now I actually got a chance to go in and have a look, and you've and a form of insanity grips these type of people. Again, they've got no discipline. They've got no work. They're not focused on doing the job. They're focused on spending the money and swanning around in a prestigious way. So there's a recent, sub-Saharan African woman's come in as an elite. She claims to be a refugee or something like that. The university gives her a job in preference over a qualified white person, of course. And so they decide that she should be into this because they can give her a nice pay rise. She's ostensibly the receptionist to answer the phone, but she decides she's actually descended from African queens or something like that. She's an African queen, she insists. So she doesn't do menial things like work. So the phone rings, and what do I care? But somehow the money is found so she can have trips back to Africa and go back to the village of, the peasant village of her ancestors. So you can swan around and say, like, I've gone to the West and I've made it. And those white Western people are dumb as fuck. They just throw money at me for doing nothing, and even pay for me to go travel first class back to Africa and so on. So this is what's going on, and they can't spend the money quickly. There's always a new way of having to, or a new argument that's found for, well, did you know that this person was a refugee who was raped by and this and that, a victim, and so we have to give them a prestigious, well-paying job. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't even matter whether they do anything or not. We just have to push money at them. And that demonstrates our credentials for equity and equality and da-da-da. So the equity inclusion, well, no one ever thought, well, where's the next lot of money going to come from? Okay, we spend this, what happens? And no one thought about that. They were prepared to burn and viciously and aggressively burn all the cash they could until the cash ran out and there was no cash. In the meanwhile, there's no money being put towards the proof of concept of the prototype, which is essential. That is why they're all supposed to be there. That must be the focus, but it's not the focus at all. Everyone's in a mad scramble to gouge as much money out of the places they can and stuff it in their pockets. Even if they can, get their mistress $10,000 or $20,000 or put them up a little downtown apartment. Even that is the priority. The priority is going back to Africa, to the village. The priority is how many black lesbians you hire. The priority is this and that. There is no priority to getting this prototype done. But in the end, it didn't get done. The prototype was never finished. The private sector guys lost interest because they could see it wasn't going anywhere. They ended up selling the technology for a song. Wouldn't even have covered a day's wages of the operation, and in the end, the money they got for it. So this is quite a typical sort of thing that once people have unaccountable type money, then they tend to behave strangely. I'll use one more example to show that it's not literally confined to that, but the ingredients of failure and the ingredients of squandering money are the same. I went into I was hired into a company as the EVP, and the company wasn't doing well. The reason being is that the CEO was really just the son of a very, very wealthy socialite. And the socialite had funded the business to the tune of multi-millions. The actual CEO was quite a bright guy, but in his own way. But all he did was employ his friends and relatives, and then they employed their friends and relatives. Nobody had been hired really on the basis of competence or quality, achievements or qualifications or credentials. They'd all been hired because somebody knew somebody and liked somebody. And so it was just a bunch of friends and relatives playing in the sandpit, pretending it was an actual business, which of course it wasn't. It was going backwards, and they were burning big money, and they were sort of confused as to why. The various factions in the business and the board of directors was split into factions. They all wanted their boy to come in as the EVP, but they all managed to cancel each other out. Then the bank that had the biggest amount of money in there, apart from them, said, "Look, you got to get an outsider. The only thing we're prepared to accept is somebody that nobody knows," because they cancelled each other out. Their own candidates are out. And so they landed on me, and that's how I ended up getting into that place. I was the only guy that nobody knew. Nobody could disagree with it. We don't know this guy, so we won't oppose his appointment. So I came in and found the same sort of thing. Everyone was treating this as an endless, bottomless pit and trough of money that you just burn through. So they went through the most outrageous laxity and expenses, and everybody, it was a fucking gravy train. People were just treating it as a money fountain, and people who should have known better, by the way, or some of them. Some of them were just to sail off with the fairies in terms of finances and how money's made and productive return on investment. They almost had no concept. They'd stare blankly at you when you talk to them about it. So I found it wasn't that hard to stop the hemorrhaging of money. And the hardest thing was to get people to accept it. And if you've got someone who, for every week of every Friday, they pretend they've got an important customer that just happens to be next to a beachfront, an exotic beachfront hotel, and every Friday they go up there with their family to this fucking hotel, and so I had a customer there, so I had to go and visit them every Friday, and you have to stay at this 5-star fucking hotel and so on, and then you don't fly back till Sunday, and but I paid for Saturday night out of my own pocket. That's not the point. So you look at that and say, hey, this person's burned in plane flights and hotel bills and for all the stuff of all this travel, and they're just having a weekend vacation. That's all they're having, and they think, because I've been doing it for a while, that they're entitled to it. There was another guy decided to do a PhD and part-time, and so he'd turn up in the morning and shuffle a few papers around, and then he'd go off to university to do his PhD and expected to be paid, and he'd got away with it for quite a while. So when I cornered him on it, he said, well, look, hey, I've got away with it for a couple of years. What's your problem? Why not just let's leave it. Who cares about the last year? I still want my full-time pay and salary. So really, the idea of entitlement was there, and people were prepared to fight to the death to keep these entitlements. And this is the same, really, I think, in these research centres. You've got it suddenly awash with money, no accountability, no actual purpose to it, just a bunch of activists hiring each other and giving each other grifter type jobs, and and it's all guaranteed to sort of fall to pieces. They never have a feasible, purposeful objective where they're actually doing real work. That doesn't even exist as their mission. And quite apart from that, there are a bunch of people who just don't know what to do when all this money arrives. But there you go. That's all the race hustle grift that's going on, and I see it in other quarters, but particularly there. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback Channel, and thank you for listening.